Okay, let's talk about the Wolves, who to me are the most confusing team. Maybe I'm wrong on that one, but for me they are. They have won 4 games in a row, and this is right after losing 4 games in a row, and the vibes were not good during that streak, and a bunch of post-game comments and whatever else. Here's the gist, and it's funny because it's basically the opposite of the Knicks. The defense is better than the offense. They're up to 4th in defensive rating. Their defense has been really great, especially in the last 4 games. And it feels like they are getting back to their identity as a team, which is good. With some interesting defensive scheme stuff where, typically Gobert is going to drop back on screens and be the great rim protector that he is, but they've also been experimenting more with him higher up on actions and how is the help on the back line when he does those types of things. We will get into all of that. And then on the other side of the floor, you have this constant thing between like Ant's playmaking and Randle's place in the offense and the type of shots that he's getting and, where's Conley at this with his age at this point, and are Dante and Jaden making shots? If Dillingham can be a real scorer for them off the bench, and some of that is Chris Finch just being willing to play him, period. And now he also just had an ankle injury, so he's been out for the last few. Stuff like that. Anyway, I would like to start with the defense. In their first game against the Clippers, where they won and both teams could not crack 95 points, so at least a good sign on defense, they did get lucky because Norm was out. Norm was also out in the next Clipper game they played. But the thing that I noticed in that game was the amount of times that Gobert was higher up on hardened screen actions. I mean, you still got your typical Rudy dropping back on some plays, but when he was higher up, it mostly worked out for them. There was one play where there was no help on the back line and Gobert was very mad. Besides that, you had plays where like Randle is hard helping off of Batum in the corner. Another play where Randle helps maybe like a half a second too late, but he gets there on Zoo, who would be open at the free throw line otherwise, which then gives Rudy time to get back in the play. And then you had just good general ball pressure and screen nav from Ant, Jaden, Nikhil. It looked like last year's Wolves defense. They looked great. And then the Laker game. So they did benefit off the Lakers missing a bunch of threes, committing some dumb turnovers, and also just having very little energy, if I'm being honest. But I did also notice, once again, you've got a player where Gobert is higher up on a screen, and it forces a LeBron pickup, and then it becomes a turnover as he tries to throw this bullet pass to AD, and I don't remember who stole it, but it's just the Wolves collapsing on that pass. Nas had one play that would make 2013 LeBron be like, what the hell's going on right now? He stayed with LeBron on a drive, and then he blocked the layup. I'm like, oh my god, what did I just see? So yeah, good stuff. Their defense looked back in those games. This can be the Nas Reed segment. So I know his 3 ball is a little worse than last year. It's still good at 36%, but I think that'll go back up and he's very willing to take them. How much he improves the spacing when he's out there. The fact they are better with him and Gobert than they are with Gobert and Randle. That is good stuff. Now, Randle and Gobert together are like a +5 on the season, so it's not like that's been bad. It's just Nas and Gobert is a larger number. Nikhil continues to be very reliable on both sides of the floor off the bench. And then as far as the Warriors game they just played, I like the plays where it was like Steph puts Nas Reed in action, and then he goes way high up on the Steph screen, and then Gobert is there on the back line for help. They did a good job jumping passing lanes as well. Again, it looks like their defense is back. As far as Randle, I mean, look, it's Julius Randle, okay? There's going to be times where his activity is not what you'd want it to be. We'll just put it like that. I will just repeat, they're basically all the way back to being a great defense. Of course, that's because of Rudy's rim protection and the perimeter defense, but whatever. Anyway, to talk about their offense some more, where they're 20th in offensive rating. So before we get to specific stretches of games, I'll just say it again, like DiVincenzo shooting 33% from 3 so far is a massive disappointment. They need him to get back to being one of the best shooters in the league of last season. They need Conley to keep winning the fight against Father Time. It was getting real spotty very early in the year. And Jaden, the offensive jump has just never happened with Jaden. Obviously, he still has a lot of value on the other side of the floor, but yeah, constant play-to-play, ball pressure, screen navigation, Jaden's got all that. And as I'm about to talk about stretches where they struggle dealing with double teams, just know, like, of course, Ant on any given night can put up a superhero performance, and they do have their moments where the ball is zipping around at least somewhat, but they have had issues dealing with double teams. You'll see what I mean. 2 of their recent games, 2 of the losses before this win streak, to the Rockets and the Kings, both had these stretches on offense where they just looked pretty bad. Let's start with the Kings game. So in the fourth quarter, they were up 8 with I think like 6 minutes left, and then their offense just pretty much died the rest of the way. And it was a whole lot of Ant pick and roll, as you would expect. And the Kings were just putting 2 to the ball on Ant. They had Sabonis very high up on screens. And I want to say it was Keegan who was trailing Ant on these screens. And when you pause it, like there are passes that can be made, whether it's like a skip to the opposite corner for Conley, because Fox is helping off of him just a bit. It's a tough pass, but it is there. You've got Rudy who's open for about half a second on the roll. And instead, what it becomes is Ant just basically being overwhelmed by like 2 or 3 dudes around him, and he eventually throws it to Jaden in the corner, who does almost make a drive and a layup out of it, but everything's just a second later than it needs to be, you know? Another time where they try to run this like Ant, Gobert, Randle, like kind of horns action where there's 2 screens being set, and it just turns into Randle isoing on Crowder, and he takes this, a very typical Julius Randle like free throw line jumper shot. Sometimes he never misses those. This one he misses. And it was decently contested. And then, admittingly, on the other end, the Kings made some tough shots. Then you had their loss to the Rockets, where they went down by a lot. They had to make a comeback. The most noticeable thing was how aggressive the Rockets were with their help. Like, there was one play specifically to sum it all up. There were 4 Rockets in the paint on an Ant drive, and Jabari was 1 foot away from being the 5th Rocket in the paint. The Rockets did a good job picking their spots on when to double Ant or Randle. But then they go on the comeback. Some of it was ramping up the intensity, having Ants like pressure Jalen Green full court, or Dillingham coming in the game and being the spark plug that they're hoping he can be. The 3 off the catch, he had a 3 off the dribble. He had a great lob to Gobert after the Ant Gobert pick and roll, and then it was like a swing, which that feels like something that doesn't happen in their offense enough, like the extra pass after the action, which then leads to a better shot, you know? They got a Nas 3 off of an Ant Gobert pick and roll where there were 2 to the ball. They need as many plays like that as possible. And then you had your typical just Gobert protecting the basket stuff, whether it was against Şengün or just all of the Rockets. Şengün did get Gobert later on in the game with a big shot around the rim, but yeah, it goes to overtime, and they have like a first minute and a half of the overtime where they look pretty good, and then their offense just goes completely nowhere. Jabari and Şengün double Ant, that's a turnover. Randle has this very awkward ISO versus Brooks, and then Randle also had another one of those drives where he basically just drove himself into a double team. They also missed a couple of open threes, and okay, they lose the game. And then after that, they go and win 4 games in a row, and they basically just suffocate teams the whole way through. So yeah, I don't think this offense is ever going to be beautiful. I feel like you are just going to have a lot of possessions where it's Ant or Randle having to make difficult shots, make difficult drives, having those half-second windows to make reads that sometimes they're going to hit and sometimes they're not. You'll get your stretches where Ant looks like one of the best players in the league. We'll see if Finch wants to give Dillingham minutes like that. Minot was great in their last one against the Clippers. So I do think they're good. Can they get back to being last year good? I don't know.